Hello, Africa. Welcome to the Business Wisdom series. Open your door. We don't talk enough. We don't interrogate issues enough. And this platform is there for us to open our doors and hear new voices on topical issues affecting the African continent. We believe deeply that we can unleash economic abundance in Africa. Today, we want to speak about something called volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. Change is coming and change is here. And if we don't understand the trends coming to us and coming at us, and if we don't understand our strengths and our weaknesses, our businesses will be decimated, as we have started seeing through the COVID period. To help me debate and dissect this story, I have a business anthropologist, Shamim, my co-faculty member. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Great. Terence Chambati, systems change agent and EXO consultant. Your voice is needed today. I hope your door is open.
Thank you for letting me in.
Great. So they say it's a volatile world. They say it's an uncertain world. And if any of the events in the past is anything to go by, we know that change is here. And in building a business, we need to be very clear in terms of what the trends are. We've spoken about purpose. We've spoken about core values in building our strategy in this mini strategy safari. Is it important to understand trends as a leader or as an entrepreneur? Why is that important? Let's talk about trends.
Well, as you said, Elton, the only constant thing or disruption is happening. So they say the only constant thing is change, and that's exactly what's happening to us.
But usually you don't see it coming. It doesn't hit you hard. It creeps up, subtly.
I mean, as it happens, you don't see it happening, but it is affecting you. One day you then just realize we don't have this, we don't have that. But that's because we are not paying attention to it. So this is where the whole concept of disruption happens. It then hits you as disruptive, and you start asking yourself, where did this come from? But the signs, they were always there. I mean, things like climate change has been happening. Global warming has been happening. But we say, it's not for me. It's for the conservationists. It's for the environmentalists. But today, issues around COVID also point towards taking care of the environment, taking care of the planet. So these things are going to carry on changing. The business world is going to carry on being disrupted, and we need to pay attention to it and ensure that we do not get disrupted and start disrupting.
In your engagements, and as you come in as well, do you discuss this? Is this front and center in your engagements? Because some of these technologies we're hearing about and the environment we're living in, pretty disruptive. Do leaders, do CEOs, board members understand that change is coming?
Well, you're setting me up. But here's the thing. When we opened up this space, we're saying open your door, right? And we are opening up a space from a perspective of we know nothing, right? And so it's very important that when we get into the spaces of disruption, we understand that we will be hit by one thing after the other. Do our business leaders understand? I don't know, but do you understand?
Do you understand?
Yeah, perhaps it's something that we need to...
You start with yourself. Do you understand
Absolutely.
the change that's coming your way?
Yep.
So from a personal perspective, as a person who leads a business, I always talk about being global. We are not creating our companies to just be in one place. You're a startup for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, you're still a startup, right? We all have a vision for our businesses. We have a vision to grow and impact communities. And so for me, in that perspective, the first trend we should be embracing is we've got the sustainable development goals. And the conversations I have with business leaders around this in terms of when we talk about purpose and, whether it's for the business and your people, we've got a point of reference. We are part of the global agenda. Can we sit back and say, oh, my business is contributing to global goal 0, or goal 1 or goal 4, or, that kind of thing. So if we have a mindset of that nature, we will pay attention to trends. So if I am saying that as a company, in terms of where we're going, in terms of our purpose, and in terms of our vision for the business, we are contributing to goal 4. can you do things within your business that reach out to goal 4, that your people will get to understand that we are serving goal 4 as part of the global agenda? And so you're paying attention to the trends that hit goal 4.
You see, when I hear you, sorry to cut you short,
Yeah.
but when somebody cuts a tree to make charcoal,
Yes.
and you're talking climate change,
Yeah.
you see, the impact of that decision or that action, to me, as Elton, with access to that forest, it's far away from me. And so I don't care so much at the time because I want to make a quick buck. How can you get people to understand SDG investment is important? Have we not become selfish in our own cocoons and say, you know what, I'm making money, SDG is a government thing, climate change, I can cut a tree, it doesn't affect me, maybe I'll be dead. The distance between your action and the result of climate change.
Sure. So the issue of ownership comes into play, Elton. I think people in communities need to understand, or leaders need to help people comprehend and understand that this is ours. It is not this person's land or this state's land or this person's piece of plantation. If the sense of ownership, if we say this is ours, I think coming from a perspective of ours, we now need to take care of this. If we remove this, how are we going to regenerate it? Have we started planting more trees before we start chopping down this one for charcoal or for timber or for whatever it is? That understanding, the impact of cutting down a tree today needs to be understood by whoever is cutting down.
But look at where we're starting, Terence.
Yes.
You drove to this place today.
Confirm.
The traffic jam,
Yes.
the road usage in this city is terrible. If we can't make small decisions that are affecting us in the here and now, how about a tree that takes 20 years to grow? I just found it here, I cut it, make charcoal, make a quick buck. I see that happening because of all the companies that I consult with currently. The SDG discussion, I might not have had it, but I don't see anyone coming to the fore like Samsung saying we're aligned with SDG 1, 17, etc. And this is what we're doing to make it happen. Okay. We feel like we're in a cocoon and we're not part of a global ecosystem.
Okay, so when in a previous conversation I introduced something called corporate social justice. And so and that's our responsibility as consultants in business to call out organizations on these aspects, because we understand that we are competing for the spaces on the global platform, right? But also our contribution, say, in terms of, we've seen, for example, about climate change. There are people who are actually leading this cause of climate change within this country, within the continent of Africa, and across the globe, right? But what you say is quite important in understanding the value of equity in our voices, right? Okay. So yes, we're talking about the traffic, we're talking about the combustion caused by cars, and then we get into a space where when we notice those problems, it's an opportunity for us to innovate and be able to find solutions so we can save our continent, right? Or save the world, the universe. But however, when you get into the space of equity or how we all compete in those spaces, we might find that, you know, those are questions that our leaders, and that, I mean, our countrymen, our members of parliament, are the people who actually make the laws of these countries that take responsibility for. In terms of, we talked about lifelong learning, we're not talking about learning in the classroom. We're talking about, if I've gone to school and I've got to understand through conventional studies that climate change is important, and that when I came to Uganda, for example, I really wanted to go to the beach. And I was yearning to have my feet in the sand. I went to the beach. I was disappointed. There was no sand. So the water levels had risen, and I was upset that no beach is available for me to actually put my feet under the sand, you know. And so it's those things that we have to pay attention to, that when we have those conversations of SDGs, do the fishermen understand the result of their action?
Overfishing.
Absolutely. When we talk about, we've worked in different places where you find people dispose of plastic bags everywhere, right? We know it's a problem and we know it's damaging the environment, but people keep dropping the rubbish there. So when people keep dropping the rubbish, what is our government saying? What are they doing? Because if you don't give people solution, they'll keep repeating the behavior. Yeah. So let's educate people, but then let's create an alternative, whether it's a government entity where we're saying we can do this. Let's have people innovate within those spaces to be able to solve the problem.
I always say greed is a terrible thing, and I think that's the disease we're dealing with. Resource-constrained countries go much further. They succeed more than us. Uganda, as a case in point, so many trees, so much. The lake is Lake Victoria is all over. Wherever you go, beautiful views, but people are cutting down trees. Sand is silting into the lake. Trees are being cut down. Teak for charcoal, and yeah, we're all using charcoal in our homes. How do we begin that conversation? Because that's a trend that's going to affect us. Climate change, the water levels are going up. I'm told Lagos, if at this current rate, will disappear. Miami in the US in the next 15 years will not be there. Those are the effects of climate change. I want to blame the education system again in terms of education. But how do we get, because SDGs, we've been with them for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And when we look at the tracking, we're still far away in terms of where we want to go.
Sure. They say the actions of today are the trends of tomorrow. And the trends we are seeing today are the actions of yesteryear. So it's these things, the problems we are seeing now, it's problems which started some years back and people did not do anything about them and became trends. But there are positive effects to that. People who've dedicated and said our purpose is to address these challenges which the world has. We do not want to leave anyone behind. Therefore, we are looking at all 17 SDGs. And for example, as an organization, we are going to tackle SDG number 1. We're looking at poverty, zero poverty, and what are we doing towards zero poverty? What are we doing towards food security? So when an organization, as we establish organizations and businesses which are currently there, if they were to look through the 17 SDGs and say, what are we addressing as a business? Try and bring that into your purpose so that people, your team members, your members of staff and your stakeholders understand that Scaling Up Africa Advisors is going towards education for all. That's the SDG they are driving towards. So your peers now know that this is your purpose, which you're working towards. This is the SDG you're working towards. What are you leveraging doing that? This is the area of exponential technologies now coming into play. How are you going to accelerate people learning? How are you going to accelerate zero hunger? How are you going to accelerate agriculture and food security across the globe?
Because it's important for the world.
Yes.
Is it also important for my bottom line?
Oh, yes. So there's the issue of, I think from an accounting point of view, people have been looking at they call it the triple P, profit, purpose, people.
Planet,
Add planet in there. Well, I've actually added purpose. It has not been there. It's just been planet, people and profit. But I think purpose needs to be the anchor of that.
In my interaction with SDGs, I worked with a company that was aligned on all 17. I know the Prime Minister's office in Uganda tracks the SDGs. But the UN framework, we're a party to it. But how do they enforce that countries? It's not an award that's going to be given. It's something we must do. Isn't it just a voluntary framework that people are just being, it's a good thing to follow SDGs. If Millennium Development Goals failed, we'll have SDGs. Maybe in the next season, we'll have another set of
XYZ
goals. Because then that alignment with the sovereign, because countries are sovereign states. How does the UN body enforce and make sure that these are being tracked? Because very few of us will have that concern for the planet. I want to make a quick buck and disappear. I cut the entire forest, make charcoal, buy my SUV, build my house, and I live happily ever after. I think that's how a lot of people are thinking. How do we spark a conversation? I know we're talking trends, but you touched a very, very pertinent topic.
Okay, so I think that who we are sanctioning right now is not the UN, because we are, like you said, we are sovereign states, right? Earlier on in our conversation, we did say that people don't like to be managed. Neither do nations. Nations don't want to be managed, right? And so the obligation that we have as a people or as a government is to say, hey, hang on a minute, we are part of the global agenda. And this is what we're going to do. So if the Prime Minister's office is keeping track of what we are doing or our progress in terms of the SDGs, who is communicating that? Because these things do not, the challenge we have is this thing starts in the boardroom and end in the boardroom. We need someone, a peasant down in the village to understand what no poverty means, what zero hunger means, what life under the sea means, what equity and diversity means, and be able to communicate it in the language they best understand. The challenge we have right now with SDGs, you'll find several people saying, oh, it's for you guys who are doing PhDs, it's for you guys who are, who are the land. But these challenges hit us all at once. We have the same experience, right? And so it's important that as a country, as a government, we take responsibility for these conversations to be hard across the board. And so the UN is a body, right? I don't think it's really their responsibility to say, hang on, Uganda, you're not doing well on education.
They can only support.
Absolutely. It can only support. So we have to have the mass, and our mass is our people. Rally around our people to say, hang on a minute, guys, this is how we can benefit from the global agenda. And this is what you can do. Something as simple as you not littering is important for you to actually keep your environment. Recently, I went out on a walk with my son and my niece. And we had sweets. And when we all had our sweets during our break, and my niece had her sweet and littered in the road. And my son said, hey, you're littering. And then she said, yeah, what's wrong with that? She said, no, you can't do that. You're damaging the environment. So we're going back to what we are teaching our kids in schools and the perceptions that are held, the conversations that are held within. And so we can learn from each other in the sense of how that one cover litter of a sweet will actually impact our environment.
And add on to the whole pile of that.
That was a teachable moment. So I think for business leaders as well, on the SDGs, we'll need to have teachable moments. We go, we open their doors, and we find out what these big organizations, at least to start, are doing towards SDG alignment. Because I think it's mission critical. That's one trend. Let's talk COVID and remote work. Let's talk COVID-19 2021 and remote work. What has changed in your world ever since the lockdowns became your visitor, permanent guest at home?
So I think the shocking thing which happened then, caught unaware, and what do we do next? That was the question. What do we do next? These waves then came along. We were getting better prepared by the day, and as the last wave which hit us, I think more people were prepared for it, although some were still, unfortunately, caught off guard again. I don't know why, but they refused to learn. It was an opportunity to learn. It was an opportunity for us to say, okay, guys, we do not need to be there to be there. We can make use of technology to be there. What's there to assist us? You can work from home. There's connectedness, cloud-based, cloud-native platforms which can help you work from home, cloud-based storages, and you name it. So you can actually carry on being productive as opposed to being present. So I think we've put emphasis on being present in our office spaces, the physical office space, as opposed to focusing on productivity. People who have realized that we can actually work remotely have embraced that and have started excelling. Without
being managed.
There you go.
Now imagine the manager who used to wait for you to come in at 8 a.m. There's no more physical space to go to. So the focus, I think the whole COVID-19 in terms of pivoting to remote work has really brought this whole issue of focusing on results. Wherever you are, you don't have to watch the clock, you're focusing on results. And I do not know whether the managers are pivoting well or the leaders to be able to run a remote workforce. And I think Harvard Business Review has been doing a lot of research around how teams can now run in this space. So remote work is a trend that you guys have seen. How have you been working?
Interesting, but I was already there. And I know I was invited to a conversation, and I did say that whereas as a country we were grappling with what do we do now, we are peering through the fog, the rest of the world was already there, right? And the lessons that we can learn from this experience are as simple as that we need to pay attention, but also understand what actually work is. Because we've tended to think that work is me carrying my bag into the office, sit at the desk, and that's what work is, right? And so the purpose and essence of why you hire me have been out of the way until when COVID presents this opportunity for people to learn from. So recently I tweeted about the idea, having gone through an experience where people are working from home and are managing themselves. And I was saying that, we've got to realize that we don't need managers to manage people. That for us to have managers, we're actually trapping talent not to move ahead. I told you about a series that I'm currently watching that I actually implore all business owners to watch, New Amsterdam. It's in a hospital setting, and it brings the human centricity of what we're actually talking about. And this guy is a hospital director, and he calls everyone within the hospital and says, if you know you're doing a job that doesn't give you meaning, you see, it's relating back to purpose. Doesn't give you meaning, you don't know what you're doing, just come to me and tell me what you're doing and what you would like to do. And several people that he had no idea were part of his business came up saying, I've been doing this. What are you doing? I was the one doing the typewriting, and said, who still uses typewriters? Right? You're paying that person.
Guys who issue insurance are still using typewriters.
Yeah, but we've moved ahead, and so thinking about and that could be something that is still used elsewhere. But if it's not competent for my business right now, why should I pay somebody to operate a typewriter that is not it's not in use? And so it brings us it brings a lot of conversation in terms of purpose and saying how you use your talent, as well how you apply the talent that you have. So you have many people trapped elsewhere. When people work from home, they're spending much more time with themselves. And we say that's the essence of cultivating purpose. Just looking to analyze this kind of work that I'm doing, how does it fulfill me? So the trends in that for me is it calls for policy formation in many aspects. And the first one, especially as a country, being data security. When people work from home, there are elements of data that are traveling in different channels, right? And so you're getting your work laptop, working from home. You're going to interface with data of another individual who is perhaps your client or a colleague. And then whatever happens in between that space is a responsibility for the business. So what I'm saying to business owners and what they should be asking our government to focus on is data security. Are we paying attention to the trends in data security? How are we using, what kind of data are we asking people for? How are we processing the data? How are we protecting it? I recently went into hospital and they were taking my details, and the lady, bless her, she asked me, what's your tribe? And I said, I'm sorry, what did you say? What's your tribe? And I said, how is that relevant? I'm into hospital to seek health care, right? How is my tribe relevant? So that kind of data that you're collecting, how is it relevant? And for me, it's not about challenging, but it's about ensuring that the data we're asking people is actually relevant. So I want you to be able to tell me, we collect this for statistics, and I'll be happy to give you my data. But if you're collecting data that you don't need, then we need to be very careful about that.
Sure.
Really interesting.
I think exponential organizations, which we're talking about, your Googles of this world, their MTP is organizing the world's information. A situation like this, Shamim, where we've got so much information out there, Shamim was questioning, or rather probing, who's got access to this data, who's making use of it, who's sharing this type of data. I think this is where we say, how can we use these trends or these exponential technologies to better manage, access our data? These guys probably saw it a few years back. It's not so long ago that your Facebooks, your Googles of this world came on earth. But they realized that we are able to actually come in, use the technologies around what do you call it? Quantum computing, being able to bring in
To
more
harness and
brains,
do
to
analytics
understand
on the data
analytics,
they're
you name
collecting.
it.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence is now coming into play. At times, the doctors can look at you and say they can miss something. They're human as well.
Yeah.
But if we are able to start picking up your vitals and the trends of your health status for the past couple of years, and we've got some central repository where we've got all this information, we can pick up in advance that, oh, Elton has got this particular disease which might hit him in the next couple of years. How can he prevent it before it's a problem? So it's things like this which now convergence of technologies, your drones coming into play. At one stage, actually getting a drone up was so expensive, but the cost of that device which goes into the drone keeps going down. So the more the sensors which go into play, opening up avenues for artificial intelligence, agricultural technology, flying cars. Who knows? We might be seeing flying cars in the next couple of years. Dubai, I know, are talking about it. Flying taxis, people going to space.
You see, the reason why trends are super important is you might be building something that is no longer relevant for our time.
Yes.
When Google started, newspapers were selling their newspapers. You go on the street corner, but they decimated the newspaper and advertising industry. So I know so many newspaper companies, even in Uganda, when you look at their P&L, I think it's red, because people are now consuming news in a different way.
Online.
And I know this is also the cradle of civilization. I know Africa won't get left behind because we pioneered M-Pesa, we pioneered wireless technology in terms of just jumping the whole landline story. So there's this group of organizations they're calling exponential organizations. They grow 10x faster, but they do that better and cheaper. Which means that they're riding on the wave of exponential technologies. And I wanted to bring this to the fore to say, what are some of those technologies we need to watch over before we start a business or as we do our strategy so that we're not caught unawares. I saw an example, Lafarge, Zimbabwe and Zambia are now doing 3D homes. So they have changed their manufacturing facility and it's now possible to build a house with the machines that they have, and they now are making 3D ready cement. So it has changed. It has come. It's in our backyard. And what are people going to do? What is the builder or the bricklayer going to do? They're going to be out of their jobs. It's got far-reaching impact. What other technologies are you seeing in our world that you know are going to hit us like a ton of bricks?
Now, there are many examples, Elton, and I'll pick a simple one which we've got in abundance, especially here in Africa, solar energy. I mean, if we look at solar as an industry, it's only now that we are seeing more and more panels opening up. We are trying to, you know, there's an image which goes up, which you can search for on the internet, where you look for Africa, and there are these small dots of lighting across the continent. Surely with the amount of sunshine which is Africa, we should be the brightest.
Surely.
Surely we should be the brightest.
I'm told that the penetration of energy, or in terms of accessibility, we are under 5%. The whole continent.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yet we have the sun reaching us the most every single day.
We need to do something.
We need to do something about that.
So going back to the cost of solar panels, I think some years back, so the price is reducing more and more by the day. Technologies are going in there to bring down the price exponentially. So now you see, and once again, pointing to problems they are solving. Now you can find someone in remote areas who's got a solar panel. They're able to charge their phone. They're able to put light into their house. They're able to probably now communicate and get health updates, weather updates for their crops, all because of solar panels. Look at the amount of change they are contributing. But this is an exponential technology which has been thrown in there and we ignored for a while, but it's now disrupted.
Yeah, and at the time it was an issue of the cost of producing solar energy to the grid was way expensive compared to hydroelectricity and thermal. Now it's going down. And what are we going to do about it? And we have the sun in abundance, and who are we to blame for our poverty? Shamin.
I think that part of the challenges that we face today is there's this whole notion of technology is here to take people's jobs. And I guess we can get to a level where we get to embrace innovation and find out ways in how we as a people can use technology, because it's not what technology can do for us, it's what we can use technology for. And the better we understand it as a people, as a country, as businesses, business owners should also embrace that from a perspective that, say, when you introduce technology A and your people are fighting it, perhaps they don't understand why your technology is here. And I think we need to invest a lot in research and development. And I know that many times these are kind of things we talk about, that all these huge organizations that we admire today have systems that work for them. So they'll have a research and development section that is out there to search what is new on the market, how is it being used, who is challenging it, what's coming out. And you mentioned a very important aspect of, we could end up doing something that is not going to be relevant tomorrow. And so as a people, as businesses, as a continent, we need to embrace technology, learn more. Some things might seem so far away from us, but hey, they are coming. They are coming. Today, if you look at the penetration of mobile phones across the continent, even within rural areas, it's becoming crazy. So now that we see what COVID-19 has told us is you must be online to be relevant.
That's true. So I see the Teslas are now trickling into Africa slowly, and which means you're able to drive your car for about 1,000 kilometers, give or take, without going to the fuel station. What's that going to do to the oil and gas industry as we seek to mine? I think 38 countries in Africa now have have discovered some form of oil and gas deposits. And what's that going to do for us? Will the demand of oil and gas go down? What's happening with these electric cars that are coming? It's amazing to be able to drive for a week without going to the fuel station.
Where are you going to charge that battery?
At home.
When there's load shedding and everything else going.
Tesla has got a power wall.
Which road are you going to drive your car?
But this is one trend that I've started seeing, to say, in the automobile industry. Yeah, this is something that's really hitting hard.
Something a bit closer to home, Elton and Shamim, is the issue of agriculture. As Africa, we are supposed to be feeding the world. Yeah. And looking at agricultural technology, what can it open up for us as a continent? I think this is something we really need to pay attention to. There's very little data available from the agricultural sector, if at all reliable. If you find some, question is it reliable? We've invested in the apiculture sector, and we've said, how can we use technology to help beekeepers remotely monitor beehives, as an example? Yeah. First reaction is, this is too advanced for us. What is this going to do for me?
That excuse.
And we say, there's so much more you can gain. When we start collecting data around the particular sector, we are able to help improve and scale up operations within agriculture. Agricultural insurance, drones are being made use of. You can actually gain insurance for your crop, and drones will help to do the aerial vegetation analysis and help you, should your crop fail, you're actually rewarded, or not rewarded, paid back for, through insurance.
What would be your parting shot on this trends discussion? Well, a one phrase close on this. Shamim, Terence.
Pay attention.
Pay attention.
In terms of trends, take advantage of them, disrupt or be disrupted.
So I know somebody once said the blow that knocks you down is not the hardest, it's the one you don't see coming. Trends are like that. And learners will inherit the earth. The learned will find themselves beautifully prepared for a world that no longer exists. So pay attention, get to know more about what's happening around you, so that your business is built for the 21st century, to manage for abundance and not for scarcity. It's been great speaking with you. Great people, and I'm sure that we will definitely meet pretty soon to unpack more issues so that we can scale up Africa through business re-education. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Until next time, have a good weekend, and I will speak to you soon. Thank you.
Bye.